Galaxycon tournament, and we're gonna get to see Kate on one side piloting that very powerful aggro deck that we just saw, and then on the other side is going to be Trent. So let's see, both these players are going to, let's see what they can do on this round 3. So Trent is actually going to play the first ink, develop nothing, and that leads Kate into playing the very powerful Lilo. And then obviously an uncontested Lilo can do a lot of damage in the early game, but it is now met with a LeFou from the other side. So LeFou able to attack down the Lilo and survive. So a great answer from the side of Trent there. Obviously playing a Ruby based strategy, most likely Ruby Amethyst, if I had to guess. We'll get to see what in combination he has going for him there. On the other side, Kate is going to go ahead and try to add another Lilo in play, actually, and goes ahead and plays triple Lilo opening and says, okay, if I have this many Lilos, I might as well cash in these Lilos for value. So she's just going to throw away one Lilo for 2 lore and and force the LeFou on the other side to be able to deal with it, unless Trent has something like a rush card that he wants to trade with it instead. But overall, an incredibly aggressive opening from the side of Kate. And this is exactly what she wants to see out if she wants to outpace whatever Trent's side of the table wants to be doing. And it is, in fact, Ruby Amethyst goes ahead and plays a Maleficent, draws an extra card. This Maleficent will be able to challenge down another one of these Lilos if it's not dealt with. But I do suspect that Kate is going to go ahead and use her very powerful bounce synergies on this turn to try and effectively deal with this LeFou. And then if she has something like a Buffalo, she can also try to combo those to save her Lilos. But okay, so goes ahead and uses Pascal and then plays a Bodyguard Symbol. Bodyguard Symbol, the perfect card here, as it's going to Lightning Rod both of Trent's options on the following turn, and at the same time allow these Lilos to quest for 4. So if Trent does not have an immediate answer, a good immediate answer for this Simba, it'll be very difficult to deal with the entire board from the side of K. Even if Trent does have a rushing type card in order to deal with this Simba, he does actually have to lose a LeFou to one of the Lilos, and then the Maleficent will be tapped down to be dealt with whichever way that Kate wants to deal with it. But overall, so he does go ahead and ink one of the Nims down and then shows a Merlin Goat. So actually choosing to be a little bit more deliberate, a little bit slower with how he wants to deal with Kate's threats. He actually does not attack down either of his cards into the Simba and instead chooses a quest for 2, choosing a little bit of a racing outlook from the side of Trent, and a little dubious when it, if you compare both sides, these Lilos are going to quest again for upwards of 4, and Kate is going to be very much ahead in this race and using that bounce effect in order to play a Madam Nim, and this Madam Nim is going to be able to attack down one of the threats from the side of Trent. So overall, great board control and great questing power does Kate have, and her aggressive strategy is in full force in this early game. And we're going to get to see if Trent can actually deal with Kate's board effectively. Does his patience actually pay off here, as he probably does have an effective answer for the Simba this turn? He goes ahead and uses the goat in order to attack into the Simba. His Merlin Goat survives with 1 willpower left, and then now effectively deals with the lead on the other side. So his patience is in fact rewarded in terms of card advantage, but is the damage dealt already from the side of Kate, having 12 lore on turn 4. We will get to see if, in hindsight, Trent had to, do a little bit more ineffective trades in order to try to stunt some of the questing power Kate had, or if he calculated just enough in order to both get maximum value from his cards and also not get burnt out by Kate's remaining cards in hand. So we're going to get to see just how well Trent calculated all of this. A photo is inked down to 4 ink, and Kate is going to develop a Lilo, and final card in hand is going to be this prince, and it's actually Arthur is a great card here as it's going to allow Kate to use the Lilo and then buy it back to her hand on the following turn if nothing too terrible happens to either card, and at the same time chooses to cash in this Madame Nim, and these Pascals are actually going to close out the game incredibly effectively because they cannot be dealt with anything from the side that Trent has going right now, and single target removaling them is not very much something that's going to happen right now. So between all of these combinations of cards, Kate obviously not having any cards left in hand, all of her cards are in play, but this combination of cards is just going to close out the game next turn if Trent has nothing to say about it. But can he even do anything? These Pascals are unable to be dealt with, and they are enough. So Trent decides to concede and move on to a game 2, and we did get to see Kate there having an incredibly powerful Lilo into double Lilo start, and it was in fact enough. And again, Trent might have not had the opportunity to effectively deal with what Kate was going on because he didn't have a clear rush answer for that Simba, and Kate, that's what she was banking on. She said, I'm going to turn all my cards sideways. This Simba is the only thing standing between me and my whole board getting dealt with. But again, Trent didn't have the out. Simba was able to hold down the fort and guard the Lilos that eventually lured to victory. So very good from the side of Kate. And again, that opening is quite consistent as it doesn't actually have to be Lilo for the one cost that's played. It could also be Maleficents as well that are incredibly powerful in that slot, and it could just be a 2-drop Pinocchio as well. So again, a lot of very consistent early game from the side of Kate, and all her cards just questing for so much questing power. And just trying to actually get a little bit of a better opening. He did have the LaFoe in order to try to stunt some of the aggression from the side of King, but it just doesn't have enough strength in order to deal with something like the Simba that we saw. So he needs to find something like Nim or Rafiki if he still plays a card like that, or some other option from the new Rise of the Floodborn set that deals with early game threats. Can he actually get some of his synergies going a little bit earlier as he's going first now? And does he actually have a 1-drop, which was the main reason he fell behind in the first game? He does. Okay, so he does have a Pascal here. Is Pascal actually the ideal 1-drop here? Again, Pascal very good against the control strategies because he is so elusive and unable to be attacked into and forces hard removal from the other side. But again, in these aggro matchups, it's very easy to trade boards, and then effectively Pascal stops having camouflage and is therefore able to be easily removed. It actually gets bounced here. So Kate favoring dealing with what Trent has in play in the immediacy, not wanting to develop any of her threats right now, just waiting for a moment where they are a little bit more safe. We do see a Lilo in hand. Didn't want to commit the Lilo just yet, probably waiting for some sort of bounce synergy to be available before she does that. Decides to deal with the Pascal instead. The Pascal probably going to end up being used as ink in the future. But for right now, we're going to get to see what Kate decides to do for her 2-drop turn. And goes ahead and inks, taps. Is this the spot for Lilo? Does go ahead and play it, and she actually does have another Befuddle. So actually probably used Befuddle on the first turn because she was oversaturated on those Befuddles and wanted to actually keep the entire board clear over the course of the first and second turn. And now does Trent actually want to spend his time developing these threats that he developed in turns 1 or 2, or does he actually want to do something like ink those and then play a Maleficent? Does choose to opt for drawing an extra card, just keeping cards in hand in order to be inked, in order to move into those 4 and 5-drop turns. Notably, something like Maui could come down in 5 and take control of the table. I do suspect that Kate is not tapping this Lilo down if she does not have a way to bring it back to hand, and she does actually have a way to recycle that Lilo, so it goes ahead and gains 2 lore, and at the same time plays the card back to her hand in order to keep it safe. So a great micro synergy there from the side of Kate, and goes ahead and retains control over the table. This 4-3, looking quite good in the face of a 2-2 from the other side. And Trent now has to decide how to best deal with this situation. All his cards are, although he has had a lot of cards in play in the face of Pascal, he's had LaFoe, and now he's had Maleficent. All these cards don't actually have that much trading strength, in the sense that it's going to be difficult to deal with something like a symbol if it comes down. But now that he has a 4 and 5 drop looming, he can do something like, okay, so he does decide to draw 2 first, just considering all his options. I did catch a glimpse of maybe a Maui or Lady Tremaine. Gonna have to see if he develops those later, but for right now, does he have something like Merlin, Rabbit, or Goat as his go-to 4 drops of choice? Either of those would be quite fantastic on this table right now. And actually, he decides to protect his Maleficent and then develops, again, like we mentioned before, chooses to develop the befuddled Pascal and LaFoes. And that may be a consequence of the fact that Kalen does actually not have that much single tire removal or removal of any kind. So these Pascal and LaFoe will stay in play to be able to trade into cards that Kate plays. So Kate instead goes ahead and says, okay, I'm going to use this song to try to find a character card on the top 4, character card for her bouncing combos. That's going to be Arthur. Arthur, the perfect card to find here, as it's going to enable a lot of positive questing from the side of Kate. So good find for her there from the Be Our Guest. And can she cobble together a situation where she go sideways with multiple of my Lilos or Maleficents or Pinocchios, and then immediately after uses bounce effects from Arthur and Nim in order to recycle those cards? That would be the ideal scenario. Does tap 4 and goes ahead and plays Merlin Goat. So okay, so she is deciding to actually go for a little bit of a mid-rangey play, in the sense that she's going to use all her ink on one play this turn and then leave for the next turn all of her smaller size ink characters, and then try to do some sort of combo plays with those later. So definitely a good choice, just getting the largest card out of hand first before opting to use the smaller cards later. And 5 drop of choice Trent has, and it probably is Maui. Maui effectively trading with that 4-3 from the other side. A consequence of the fact that this early game Nim has 4-3 and forcing something as big as a Maui, to go into it. Maui does survive that trade on the way back, though, so able to take down another character in the future. And then this incentivizes Trent to actually use a little bit of his advantage in order to quest for 3. And we'll be able to gain a little bit of lore there. And here goes Kate playing both the Maleficent and the Arthur, like we mentioned before, setting up a little bit of her combo play on the following turn, and is probably going to use this goat for a little bit of board control. Could trade into the Maui, could go ahead and value trade into the Maleficent. I do like this a lot more, as it gets rid of as much material from the side of Trent without actually losing her Merlin on the other side. So good trade there, and Trent is going to have to see if he can maximize the value from this Maui, or if it just goes into the goat, or if he trades something else into it. So I'm just going to have to see how he chooses to trade. Does he have any sort of brand new Pinocchio from the new set that lets him tap down cards on Kate's side? Doesn't seem to be an option for him right now. So instead, he just has an attack into the goat. Goat is going to give her another extra lore before going on its way. And then I'm going to see what the 6 cost is going to be from the side of Trent. Does look like Trent in this game has the space in order to be able to develop that very powerful Lady Tremaine. And this is actually going to be a difficult choice from the side of Kate, because does she keep her engine bounce card, or does she keep her 2 questing power? 1 drop does decide to keep Arthur. I do agree with this play, because Arthur is just a little bit more difficult to play, being a 3 cost instead of just a 1 cost, and there's less Arthurs, obviously, than Maleficents and Lilos from the side of Kate, so a good choice to keep Arthur in play. Will she find something to supplement Arthur's effect? And she goes ahead and just cashes it in, goes ahead and gains 3, bounces back the Cinderella she just played. No value in this bounce, but again, she's just deciding to gain as much lore as possible in the immediacy, not worry too much about synergies as she is running out of cards in hand. And it does look like Trent has well and truly stabilized. That effect on Lady Tremaine to be able to deal with the Maleficent was a key point in this game because, again, Kate was actually going to effectively gain 5 on the following turn and recycle the Maleficent, but now is unable to do so, and the Arthur is no longer in play as it was cashed in. So being unable, Kate was being unable to draw cards with something like Merlin Rabbit in combination with this Arthur. That would have been the perfect card for her. And actually, Trent is the one who's going to be gaining a little bit of extra value from his Merlin Rabbit. Does play a spellbook. Not super ideal in this match, but again, just spellbook as a good way to use 3 ink. And being ahead in the race and on board as he is, it doesn't hurt to try to close the game out as fast as possible. So does go ahead and develop the book. And Kate is going to see if she has access to a rabbit, and she does. So the perfect card here for Kate being able to continue to amass card advantage in this situation. Definitely unideal, but again, if there was any card that could keep Kate in the game, it would be Merlin Rabbit. Merlin Rabbit seeming to be the perfect draw engine for all Amethyst decks moving into Rise of the Floodborn, and huge fan of that card I am. So very happy to see it in basically every deck so far, both in control decks as well as aggressive strategies. So just Merlin Rabbit proving to be a fundamental part of the Rise of the Floodborn format. But Trent, again, well and truly in the driver's seat in this game. And is he going to actually be able to play some sort of a removal card for this rabbit? How does he choose to effectively trade with the Lilo and the Cinderella on the other side? He does have a wealth of options available to him. It does seem like this game, if Trent is able to cover all the outs that Kate has available to her, he'll be able to move this into a game 3. So should be able to with as many options, and does actually submit another book into play. And this will allow him to probably just quest with all his cards. He might want to do something like deal with the Lilo, which is the 2 questing power card on the other side of the table, goes ahead and just trades everything instead, which is also fine. He just wants to deal with any and all cards that could gain lore from the side of Kate, and then just goes ahead and quest for 3. And then this 3 will move into 10 in combination with the spell books. He'll wrap up the game as early as the next couple of turns. So Kate does not have that much space to work with. She does have to find a way to burst 10 lore over the course of the next 2 turns. And if there's any deck that can do it, it is Amber Amethyst, but is it going to be, again, enough time? She does give herself a few more card options, using this one to draw a card with the effect of Rabbit. But who is she going to trade into? Deliberating, just deciding which card would be the most useful one for her to get rid of. Does decide to go ahead and get rid of the 2 questing power Lady Tremaine on the other side. Very astute choice, as it is the one that Trent is using to effectively race in the situation. And with 0 cards in play, is she going to be able to do something like develop a Lilo and another one-drop like Maleficent, for example? Did she find it in the top few cards of her deck? It's looking like she's not developing another card, so no. So only 2 questing power available to her on the way back. And Trent, again, it was very wise of him to go ahead and get rid of as many options as Kate had on the previous turn. Just wants to make sure that he doesn't get punked out of the game with any sort of burst of lore from the side of Kate, and knows that he has complete control of the game, so just wants to wrap it up as efficiently as possible. And this Tremaine into questing with everybody is going to go ahead and assure that. So Kate will be taking presumably her last draw step of the game, while Trent ends the game on the following turn, and we do move into a deciding game 3. She's going to play out the last few cards available to her. Actually did find access to that Pinocchio. We did not see that Pinocchio early in the game. It would have been very useful with that Arthur, for example, in order to gain 3 lore and then bounce it back to the hand. So another very powerful piece that Kate has access to, but just a little bit too late in this scenario. We might get to see that be instrumental in game 3, one would hope. But for right now, she's going to scoop it up. Trent claims the second game, and Kate on the play for game 3, exactly where you want to be as the aggressive strategy. And again, we do know that Trent has a lot of early game threats that he can play in order to match Kate's cards, especially since Kate's cards are all 1 willpower in the early game. So Trent can deal with the board effectively, but if something like a Simba is played, or if something like a Madam Nim Fox is available for Kate to sweep up some of the answers from the side of Trent, then it will be a little bit more difficult for him to actually deal with the cards Kate has access to. And again, Kate actually did catch a glimpse of her ability to be able to bounce some of the high questing power cards to her hand that game, but those synergies are a little bit less powerful when behind in play. So it's going to be very important that she gets ahead on board, as she is the first turn player in this game 3. As a consequence of most of these resource managed games, if you are the first one to add cards to the table, you are generally advantaged, and especially if your cards are so hyper efficient like Kate's as well. So do like to be on the play for that one. And Trent obviously does know what he is facing down, probably knows exactly what he is mulliganing or wanting to mulligan into, and will aggressively mulligan for those early game options. We do get to see final cuts here, and the game will begin. And does Kate have that very important 1-drop opening? She has the ability to play a suite of from 15 different 1-drops that she has in her deck, most of them gaining 2 questing power, and there is the first one in the name of Maleficent. Moving back, Trent, very important that he matches a 1-drop here. This Maleficent could run away with the game, and she is actually going to go ahead and be uncontested on board in the turn cycle. And at the same time, Kate can go ahead and develop an even further questing power threat in the form of Pinocchio. So she actually has the 1-2 punch of 5 questing power as early as turn 2, and no rebuttal from the side of Trent. So Kate is going up to 7 lore on this turn with only 2 cards in play, and she's going to be able to develop upwards of 3 more threats on this turn. Does she actually choose to instead take it a little bit slower, play 1 3-cost threat on this turn, just cement her advantage over the table? And she actually does so. Very intelligently goes ahead and recycles her Pinocchio, make sure that it doesn't fall to any sort of rush option moving into turn 3 from the side of Trent, and at the same time quest more left and pass. If something with rush is played by Trent on this turn to deal with the Maleficent, the Nim on the other side will be able to effectively deal with it, and there is nothing. So 3-drop fast from the side of Trent, and Kate is well and truly in complete control of the game right now. She gets to sequence how she wants to develop this Pinocchio again and match it with other bounce effects that she actually wants to utilize. This Maleficent and then bounce that back to the hand is inking a Simba bodyguard, because she knows that she is already well and truly ahead in play and wants to utilize all that ink in order to play GOAT. gains 1 automatically from being played, gains 3 more, and now she is just saying, okay, you can deal with my board in whichever way you like, Trent. I am just going to put every card sideways for the rest of the game, and it should be good enough, one would hope. And then Trent is going to try to disprove that, but again, he has to play some amount of rushing threats over the course of this turn and the following turn in order to deal with the onslaught that Kate had. He does deal with that 2 questing power Maleficent, although it did get to go sideways a couple of times, so the damage is well and truly dealt there. Does have the Nim trade here, so does deal with the board quite well with Goat standing strong as the last card in play, and Kate is going to be able to utilize that for any bounce strategies, or she might just go ahead and ink and develop her whole hand at this point, a very possibility, or she could draw extra cards with the very powerful. No, so she actually does choose to develop her questing power this turn, and we have the incredibly high questing power synergy of Pinocchio into Arthur is going to be 6 questing power with just 2 cards, and this combination of cards on an empty table from the side of Trent is so devastating. Not having access to any sort of Lady Tremaine FX, Hades FX, not that there would be in this color combination, but not having any sort of targeted removal from the side of Trent in order to deal with this. Ideally, Pinocchio, dealing with Pinocchio would allow Arthur to not get that much value from bouncing it back to the hand and keeping it safe. But again, just Trent not having the resources that he needed in the early game. Pass on turns 1 and 2, not ideal for him, and Kate was able to get super ahead. So Pinocchio sequencing correctly, going up 3 with the Pinocchio and then bouncing back to the hand, keeping it safe, getting 3 more with the Arthur for the full 6 conversion. Goat turning sideways once, and actually being able to a funny misstep there. It won't end up mattering as the game is well and truly over from this point, but did have the ability to bounce Goat for the end of the game, the 20th point, if she so chose. But this is fine too. Just adding 5 more questing power, why not? And the game is over, and Kate able to showcase that incredibly powerful start and those bounce synergies with the Arthur Pinocchio combo. Just her deck working masterfully in that round 3 and closing out game 3 with a victory. So great highlights for the Amber Amethyst aggro deck, and very happy to see that. So we're going to go ahead and take a little break, and we'll be back with round 4 soon.